Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating, highly specific text regarding human neurodevelopment and its proposed link to gender detransition. Now, even though the source material we're looking at is basically this one continuous string of thoughts, it is absolutely packed with timelines and biological claims that definitely warrant a closer look. So my goal today is to just break down the architecture of these claims so we can all grasp exactly what the source is arguing. Let's get right into it.
Before we jump straight into the definitions, I want you to consider a fundamental question. When does the human brain actually stop developing? Just keep that in the back of your mind because it acts as the biological anchor for everything we're about to talk about. The text we're analyzing hinges entirely on its own answer to this question, using it as the literal foundation to explain shifts in human psychology. Section 1, Defining Gender Detransition. Let's take a look at the baseline definitions established by our source. All right, so the text defines detransitioners strictly through a lens of prior medical intervention, followed by, eventually, a feeling of regret. It zeroes right in on folks who are on specific medications and then later down the line regretted that course of action. It focuses heavily on that medical aspect and the subsequent psychological shift of regret as the core defining characteristics of this group. Specifically, puberty blockers are listed as the initial step in the lived experience of this population. By explicitly naming this intervention, the text sets a very concrete baseline for the timeline we're going to explore. Following puberty blockers, the text pairs them directly with cross-sex hormones. So these are the two specific medical interventions experienced by the subjects before their mindset ultimately shifted, at least according to the source. The author basically treats these two interventions as a combined prior state, a medical reality that was navigated before the feeling of regret even entered the picture. Moving on to Section 2, the timeline of regret. So when exactly does this happen? Well, according to the text, the onset of regret doesn't have a strict, universal schedule. Instead, it happens across what the author calls ranges and variations of time. So the source isn't claiming this happens overnight, and it's not claiming it takes an exact number of years either. It leaves that intervening period highly variable, acknowledging a deeply individualized timeline for the psychological changes that take place. You can actually map this out. The source's argument follows a really distinct chronological progression. Starting at time zero with those specific medical interventions, we then pass through that highly variable waiting period we just talked about, and this eventually leads to a distinct shift in perspective, which the text claims culminates at specific age of 30. It's a very linear path, right? So the crucial point here is how the text explicitly links this variable passage of time to the phrase usually growing out of it. The source uses this colloquial phrase to characterize the nature of the regret. It frames the shift in perspective not as a sudden, sharp realization, but more as a natural, gradual consequence of merely getting older and passing through those variations of time. Which brings us to Section 3, the developing brain. Let's look at the biological milestones. The text makes a highly specific biological claim here, asserting that the human brain does not develop fully until around the age of 30. This chronological milestone is essentially the linchpin of the source's entire argument. It acts as the defining boundary line for psychological maturity. When we connect these claims, the logical structure actually becomes crystal clear. This source directly uses the biological milestone of reaching age 30 to explain the phenomenon of changing one's mind. The logic is, the brain physically develops, psychology shifts in tandem, and this ongoing maturation is what allegedly leads to growing out of it by 30. But now, the text introduces a really fascinating paradox right at the very end of its argument. It directly contrasts the idea of hitting a fully developed state at age 30 with a final, kind of contradictory claim about continuous change. The text sets up a finish line for development, but then immediately walks it back, adding a super compelling twist to its own biological framework. Just looking at the exact unedited phrasing from the source, with the capital letters, colloquial phrasing like brain muscle, and original spelling completely intact, it really emphasizes their ultimate conclusion. Despite setting that age 30 milestone, the text emphatically argues for the endless nature of brain development. It leaves us with this image of a brain that refuses to be static, one that is literally always growing and changing, no matter the age. To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with a final thought. If we view the human brain through the source's exact lens, as an organ of endless, continuous change, how might that reframe the way we view all long-term life decisions? It's a fascinating concept to ponder, rooted entirely in the claims of the text we've analyzed today. Thanks for joining me, and as always, keep questioning the structures behind the information you read.